You're so cute. We love you. Okay. No. Shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line.
Yeah, zero. Zero, that means there's no.
Oh, I'm not talking about rise over run. Okay, it's not geometry. Okay, fine. Got it. Got it. Not a graph. Not okay, but that's the idea. So we're going to just sort of very quickly talk about one thing, and then we're going to shift to the UCs for a second. Okay. So I just wanted to give you the latest research. So this is as of the end of the 2024 academic school year, and we're just at the beginning of 2025, 2026, right? So oftentimes there are thoughts that I can get an AA and do something. I can open a business. My dad has a liquor store. My dad has a gas station. My dad has a smoke shop, blah, 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 those types of things. Okay, fantastic. But do you know anything about business? Do you know how to run a business? Do you know supply and demand? Do you know opportunity cost? Do you know any of those things? No, you don't. And that requires a business degree, for example, right? And oftentimes what folks your age are looking to do is find the path of least resistance and look for the easiest option to achieve some sort of fame, glory, or wealth, and there are no easy options. So when you're looking at the jobs that are available, especially in this digital world, this AI world, I love AI. I think it's fantastic. I drank that Kool-Aid a long time ago, so it's great. But that is a tool that I use to speed up my tasks, because if the internet were to die and we had Armageddon or something along those lines, I still know how to do things. You do not. So therefore, what is the job that you are thinking about? What is the career, not even the job, that is not going to be replaced by automation, by technology, by machines? And that is where your college degrees come from. There are factories that assemble cars from the tiniest little screw, nut, and bolt all the way to the thing without a single human operating on the manufacturing floor. It's all done with a few computer programmers and engineers sitting up in a comfy air-conditioned room. So that's what physical labor, that's what blue-collar work is going to do. So when you're thinking about by 2027, so that would be when my juniors are graduating, that would be you folks over here, right? You're talking about 70% of jobs are going to need, and you too, darling, okay? So 70% of the jobs are going to need a bachelor's degree. That means 30% will not. Like if you're I don't know, a diesel engine mechanic or something, you don't need a bachelor's for that. Fantastic. All right. So when you're looking at the job postings, when you go on Indeed, you go on whatever the other platforms are, any of those things, all of the jobs there between 2019 and 2022, so in that 3-4 year span, you're looking at 98% of the jobs requiring a bachelor's, if not more. Okay? And then you're talking about then you, thank you. Normally in my classroom, I'd have my pool noodle and go whack you on the head. All right, so what we're looking at is college graduation. Those of you that do get a bachelor's, you have a 57, almost 60% more chance of getting a job right out of college than anybody else with less than that. So that means that you're in the top 2/3, not in the bottom 1/3. So those are the things that you are thinking about as to why a bachelor's, right? Okay, so we're talking about, we already covered this, like more job opportunities. I don't want to like spend a lot of time on this. And then you're thinking, okay, well, what is a job that is not going to be automated, that's not going to be done by an AI, sort of bot of some sort? And so these are really the top 3 fields for you to consider. When you're talking about education, I don't necessarily mean just, K-12. Education could be, teaching at a master's level, at a community college, at a PhD level, at a university, doing research, things of that sort. Healthcare, I would hate to consider that my doctor is going to be a robot on a computer that I talk to. I think, isn't that like WebMD? I can diagnose myself with 20,000 diseases right now, right? And then technology, that's where your engineers, your computer programmers, commerce and things of that sort come in. So these are not exclusively the only job, but they are the ones that are the most lucrative. Some of them, like especially in the field of technology, may only require a bachelor's. Things in healthcare may require above a bachelor's, and education definitely, even to get your teaching credential and teach K-12, you still need a master's, right? In a perfect world. So we're talking about definitely the advantages of higher education. Okay. The other thing that you get in college, and for those of us that have gone through college, so Robert, myself, you can bring Marilyn, Tuta. Really, I remember my first year at UCLA, and the person I walked in as and the person I was by the end of that first year, I feel were completely two different people. Like suddenly I felt what it was like to be an adult, and not in a bad way, because adulting sucks. But the idea being that there was a sense of, I don't know what it was there, like I can do things on my own. I have a sense of independence. I know how to communicate better. I have global experience because the other kiddos that were with me were from all walks of life. It was a culturally enriching experience. There were opportunities that were never offered at my high school. And I graduated from San Bernardino Unified, so I was at Cajon. So, you know, in this community, because I've been going to this church since I was a freshman in high school. And then the exposure to the type of thinking and the work that the professors gave us was remarkably different, because I thought I was pretty dang smart, you know, getting into all these top universities. But man, it was a humbling experience going in and getting a letter I've never seen on my grades ever before. I was like, oh my God, what the heck, right? So yeah, I will tell you, I always tease, especially Claire and Jacob, and I'm like, you know, my blood type is A positive, which was exactly like my GPA, until I got my first paper back in my class, and there was a C, minus, 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 minus. The minuses went on. I was like, what the heck? But it was a paper. I did get an A in the class. But it was like, oh, that's not what you write in college or how you write in college, right? And if I hadn't done that, and thank God there were rewrites, but if I hadn't done that and gone through the experience, I would have never really gotten to that level where I can finish my bachelor's with great success, and then master's and second master's and so on. So there's definitely a lot of growth that is available at a university that does not exist at a community college. In community college, it's like, in and of itself, I don't know, high school was stupid. And so why would I want to repeat it twice? Oh, that's okay. All right. So then when you're talking about things that are important, money is important. It's not the only thing, but it is very important, because, I mean, really, what can you do without it? I always think it's not just about how much money for the sake of glory and the car you drive and the zip code you live in, but it's also a way for you to do good in the world. The more money you have, the more resources you give to charity, the more resources you give to your church, the more resources you're able to provide, and so on. And then, not that you're thinking about that now, but when you have families, I mean, nothing about you folks is cheap, let me tell you. You guys are very expensive to have. So in order for those resources, for the experiences, for everything to happen, it always requires funding. And when you have a college degree, you make, in just your first year of work, 20% more than somebody who is with barely anything making minimum wage. Okay? So unless you want to smell like grease and, you know, sticky food for the rest of your life, it's okay when you're a kid in high school. It's not okay when you're an adult. And some of you work in fast food, yeah? Okay? And so then, yeah, you can't have people your parents' age working in fast food. That's what I'm trying to say. For now, fine, but that's not a career, nor is it. It's like, oh, I'll be the manager. Oh, fantastic, because then you'll make $22 an hour, right? That's not it. Okay. So that being said, then you're talking about stability. Like, what does it mean? Do you want to have a job today and lose it tomorrow? Because that's, you know, especially when you're in a recession. So what are you going to do? People with bachelor's degree only have a 2.3% unemployment. People with no bachelor's degree, just high school graduates, 4%. And I know those sound like really small numbers, but when you have 375 million Americans and you do the math and multiply it by 4%, then you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. So it's a huge differential between 2.3 and 4%. And then if you are in that 4%, not only are you meandering from job to job, but then there's no opportunity for growth. What are you going to do? You're just going to plateau. Like, are you really going to be the type of kid that peaked in high school and that's all you ever did, and after that it's all downhill? You were the cool kid in high school, you were the most popular, this, that, or the other, and then what? I can't tell you how many jocks are like working all sorts of really lame jobs because that's where they peaked. They thought that their looks, their athleticism, their whatever was going to carry them through for the rest of their life, and it doesn't. You know, you can only be charming for so long before you're annoying. So just think about those things, right? Okay. And then, right, all of these different things. When you are at a university, you are with the opportunities that a community college is not going to have. Internships, because those professors are well connected in their field. Volunteering opportunities. Paid is internships, volunteering is not paid. And to be honest, the volunteering always looks better because it shows that you're doing it regardless of the money versus I'm doing an internship just because of the money. And then of course you have your career fairs, and all the universities have those. They have resume writing, creating your Indeed profile, making sure that you go to the right resources, making sure you talk to the right department counselor. There are far more resources because there's far more money, and there's far more prestige at a university than there is at a community college. Community college is like a bus stop, okay? There's a place for people to do community college, and there's a clientele that is best served at community college, but most of you are not that clientele, okay? So just consider some of those things. And then some of the programs, like it says over here, physical therapy and, you know, this, that, and the other. Like, let's say taking nursing. You can go to a community college and get your RN degree. And the RN is basically 2 years, and you take your state board and you're good to go. Okay. And then you get hired, which is fantastic. But you can only be just that. You can't promote, you can't do management, you can't go into different specialties because there is just that. You can't work in ICU versus this, that, because your experiences are very limited. Now you're thinking, it's like, oh my gosh, we do all the work. The doctors just show up, write a script, and then leave. So I would really like to maybe become a PA or a nurse practitioner. Well, you've got to now pause. You've got to go back and get your bachelor's degree before you can even start on your master's. And then when you go into your master's program, there's also a PhD program in nursing. And so then the longer you wait between each of these degrees, the harder it is to achieve. And then it takes longer to reach your earning potential, and so you're only delaying things, and that's completely unnecessary. So we go back to the idea of the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line in whatever direction on the slope, right? All right, so that being said, so just think about those things. There are some things you can do with an AA, but there's a ceiling, and it's a very low ceiling. So how low do you want the ceiling to be versus how high do you really want to be, and that's what you want to attain, okay? All right, we've kind of covered this, so I just want to move on. Okay, the cost, okay, because we haven't even gotten to like FAFSA and financial aid, but here's the thing. Kids will say that college is too expensive. Would you agree? Okay, it is. But have you gone car shopping, for example? Right? Think about just an average car, a Camry, a Honda, you know, whatever the case is, right? And all, you know, whatever, all the comfort and creature features that you would want in it. What is the average cost of a Camry or a Honda Accord, for example? Any ideas? 30,000 is probably the base model if you're lucky. Right? So more often than not, they're running into the 40s and the 50s. Now, your college education is not going to cost you that much at a Cal State or a UC, and certainly depending on the private university, it may not even cost that much. What happens when you drive your car out of the parking lot of the dealer? it loses its value. And of course, the more high-end the car, the faster it loses its value, right? But your education will never lose its value. Your degree will never depreciate, it will always appreciate. So where are you choosing to make your investment? In something frivolous and fickle that will, one car crash and you've lost your car, God forbid. So the idea is this is the only investment that never has an expiration date. Okay? Your degrees never have an expiration date, which means whatever you earn, you keep for the rest of your life. And that is not something we can say about anything. Your health will disappear, your beauty disappears, your money could disappear, people you love in your life will disappear, but unless you lose brain cells, your college degrees are with you for the eternity, right? So just think about that. There are plenty of opportunities for grants and scholarships and things of that sort that could make it relatively cheap. Cal States are costing students usually about $1,000 a year if you are living at home. Community college will cost you more because it used to be 100% free, including books. Now you okay, so now you have to pay for your books. So each semester, like for Jacob's classes, and he's not even in college yet, but he's taking college classes, we've paid $300 to $400 for books. And so it's like, okay, he's taking 1 or 2 classes, which is costing me the same as a year at a university. So community college classes are not always the cheapest options either. So the universities tend to have far more money. The other problem that we end up seeing with community colleges is the way that community colleges make money is by keeping you there longer. So what they try to do is like say, oh my gosh, you have an AA, but if you take 2 or 3 more classes, you can get a second AA. So in your head, you're like, oh, I get 2 instead of 1 by taking 3 more classes, only to realize that you've made one of the biggest mistakes of your life. And those mistakes are you have spent so much time at the community college earning all of these unnecessary units that by the time you transfer, 2 things happen. You are almost capped out. There's a maximum number of college units you can take, above which, if you haven't earned your degree, you'll never earn a degree. So that's number 1. There's a cap. Number 2, more often than not, kids will use financial aid to cover community college books and maybe buy themselves a car and all this other stuff. And what they don't end up realizing is you only get financial aid for 4 to 5 years for your bachelor's. And if you've wasted 3-4 years at community college, you only have 1 year left to cover university, except for you realize that you've got 2 maybe years. And what are you going to do with that last year that you can't pay for anymore? So community college can be a scam insofar as if you qualify for a university, you're better off starting there and ending there. Does that make sense? Okay. Do you know some of these things? Good. Then that's the hope, is that you're walking away with some new learning, and hopefully I'm trying to discourage you. So then who is community college for, right? We have newcomers that don't speak English very much. There's no way that they could do university level work without starting at community college. I don't think that's any of you. That's number 1. We have special needs, people with certain cognitive delays or physical disabilities where certain programs are just beyond their attainment. So that's what they are going to do, is find community college, and there's a home for that. Those that just are really determined that they want to do something with their hands, like I said, mechanics, so there's a real great program at Valley and at Craft and at RCC with like Toyota and all that good stuff. That's fine, but that's all they're going to ever be able to do. So just think about the limitations of having just a simple degree above high school versus something that's a little bit more robust. Okay, so I just want you to have those ideas. So please don't assume that the cost of a university is too much. It's a small investment to make in your future that will pay in dividends. Okay, so just to give you a quick example, like when I went and got my second master's, it cost about 17,000. In the new position, I more than doubled that and was able to pay it back in a year. So was that investment worthwhile? Of course, because I'm still in that job, and now I've been in it 7 years later, so I've more than made 7 times the return on my investment when you think about it. Even when it's something daunting like law school is $250,000, med school is like $500,000, all that good stuff. But what is a doctor or lawyer going to make in a lifetime? And then this seems like a small, big numbers, overwhelming, scary, but what is the overall goal? I wouldn't say go to Harvard and spend $200,000 to walk out as a teacher, right? Like, and as a teacher, right, I know exactly what I'm saying. You're never going to return on your money. But you go to Harvard Law, you go to Harvard Med School, trust me, you'll more than make that up in your lifetime, and double if not triple that, God willing, right? So there's that. So just keep those things in mind. Okay. I think that's really all I want to say with regards to this. All this stuff we're going to talk about with the UCs. Any questions on this? Okay? All right. And that's because what we're going to do next is just really just focus on the UCs. And that's what we're doing. Okay. All right. Next time, we'll talk about Cal State's, because that's a far easier application. We'll talk about private universities common app, and then we are going to do financial aid if you are interested. And then the last thing is just making sure that if you're applying to a UC, there's going to be the PIQs. I'll talk about that momentarily. And then what I would need from you if you need my help in doing any of the edits and things like that, so that we can work a timeline, because this is a crazy time of year when it comes to folks asking for letters of recommendations and edits and things like that. Okay. All right. Now, you have about 200,000 kiddos your age applying to the UCs. Okay. What percent of that 200,000 are going to get in? 1%? 2%? Well, that's really sad. No? Okay. Anybody? Yeah? No? Are we playing that game? You're warm, you're cold? No. The answer is it depends on the UC. This is a trick question. All right. All right. No, not necessarily. Okay, so there are 9 UC campuses. I know that I was talking to Angela. San Francisco is a UC. There's a UC San Francisco, but it's a grad school only. They don't have an undergrad program. But these are, in no particular order, the UCs that are there. Any of them strike your fancy? Everybody says Irvine, right? Aardvarks. Is that what they are? Anteaters? Yeah, same difference. All right. And then Middle Earth is your dorm life business. It's like, oh, you couldn't get nerdier than Lord of the Rings. Love it. Okay. So there's that. And again, like I was having just a short conversation, and it's like, well, what's the difference between the Cal States and the UCs? And there is a huge difference, right? So they each were chartered by the state of California as public universities, so they're both public. The Cal States were designed really to not be research-based institutions, and their design was to serve underrepresented communities. So communities of color, communities that tend to be in relatively poor neighborhoods, and that's intentional because we know that folks with limited amounts of money, or your parents have never gone through college, or like many of our parents, they never went to college here, so they really don't know. And so those universities were placed in situations, in locations like Cal State San Bernardino. If you've ever been to Cal State LA, it's not in the nicest part of LA. That's purposeful. Fresno, right? All underserved communities. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not good universities, but the charter for the Cal State is just different. Okay? It's just different. Most Cal States don't have graduate schools, and if they do, they're very limited. So there may be 5 graduate programs at a Cal State, whereas at a UC, there may be in every field a graduate program. Okay? The UC's charter was really focused on research and development, and that's for everything. So this becomes like the place that was like a think tank. So if you're a political science major, you're an econ major, you're anything in the STEM major, the idea is the college professors that are there are not just teaching. That is the smallest part of their job. They're actually doing research, and that research is designed to advance their field, whether, stem cell research you'll find only at the UCs. You will not find them at the Cal States, things of that sort. And because of that research and because of their funding being extraordinary, they also have, in addition to federal and state funds, they get what are called endowments. That means that somebody like a Bill Gates who loves a place like Berkeley could say, I am going to donate $1 billion to build the science lab for, whatever, microbiologists. So those are what endowments are. They're like these generous donations by these uber wealthy folks. And, Stanford, every building is named after a particular person, like Hewlett Packard. There's a Hewlett Packard building and all sorts of things because these big companies whose founders found these universities to be, some of them went to these universities, graduated from there, so they give back. And private universities, Harvard and Yale, have over $1 billion each worth of endowments, which is why even private schools could be cheaper than public schools because they have a lot more money and they can give it anybody. And now all 9 Ivies, where if you get accepted and your family makes under like 100 and some odd thousand, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but your tuition is 100% free, right? 200,000? Okay. So under 200,000, which, is a handsome family income, but if you make under 200,000, then your tuition is free. And same thing for grad school too. It's hard to imagine getting a full ride to med school or law school, but the private universities, the Ivy Leagues, can do that, where the public are very stuck. They try to give more money to undergrads rather than grads just because we want to raise all students to at least get a bachelor's. Okay? Questions on the difference between the Cal States and the UCs? Okay? And by the same token, when you're looking and thinking about a college, oftentimes, and maybe this comes from our parents, comes from society, there's a certain stigma that says, oh, you don't want to go to there, like why? Versus, oh my gosh, like, oh, this place, that's the one. But that doesn't necessarily work. In 28 years of teaching, there have been many valedictorians that have gone to top universities and have dropped out. And the reason they dropped out wasn't because they couldn't hang in the work. It was far more emotional and psychological. They weren't ready, and this environment was very isolating for them. They really didn't know how to kind of live in the environment. They didn't know how to acclimate without, say, a home or a community. So it was really far more that than it was the academics. So that place wasn't for them. So I have this young man who got a full ride to UCLA, dropped after the first year because he was failing his classes because he was so overwhelmed. The campus has 60,000 people walking on and off at any given point. Now he ends up coming home for a year, goes to UCR, and ends up getting his PhD in mathematics in the shortest possible time with a full ride. So UCR was just the right size for him with the ability to go home every night, right? So what works for you is not going to work for somebody else. So please don't think about like, oh, my parents want me to go here. I get that. I know where I want my child to go, but that may not be the best fit for them either. So knowing what your talents are, your abilities, your personality, all of those things are going to factor in. There are other extenuating circumstances, like although I was living in LA and dorming at UCLA, the end of my first year, my dad had a heart attack. So I ended up moving out, coming home, and then I finished in 2 years, but I was commuting from Riverside to UCLA. Not fun, but it was a family commitment, and that's a choice I made. So sometimes being close may be a family necessity, which is totally understandable. You don't want to abandon, your family in their time of need. So just lots of different things to think about. Or you have a full ride, tuition and books, but now your parents have to come up with housing. Is it worth it to take out a $20,000 loan so you can live in a cramped room like sardines with other smelly, gross people, right? It may be because you want that experience and your parents are okay with it. It may not be because you don't thrive in that type of environment. So you have to think about all of these things. It's not just about GPA and this, that, and the other, although you couldn't get in there without some of those things, okay? All right, so back to the question I was asking, acceptance rates. So what do you notice? Can you read the graph? Do you know what it says? Okay. What's the hardest UC to get into? Okay. And so what's the easiest university to get into? Do you know where Merced is? Far. It's in the middle of farms. It is an agricultural school. But also notice, like in our backyard, UCR has a pretty, decent acceptance rate. We're looking at 70-ish, 75%. Okay. But obviously, UCLA and UC Berkeley are always competing for first and second place for the top public universities. So this last year, UCLA was ranked #1 as the top public university, and Berkeley, and this is across the country, not just in California, by the way. So this is when we say that the UCs are world-class universities. They definitely are. And still, when you're getting into San Diego, Irvine, so Irvine, it looks like, maybe 25% of those who apply. So if there are 200,000 people that are applying to a UC Irvine, only 50,000 will get in, which means 150,000 get rejected. Okay? So just think about that. And this is not meant to discourage you. If we were having this conversation when you were in 8th grade, at least I had it with your parents, right? The idea would be, how do I make myself competitive so I can get into a UCLA and go if I want to, as opposed to, dang it, I'm stuck, and now all I can do is go to Merced or UCR. Okay, not bad options if you have certain lines of work you want to get into, but that's the idea behind setting a very low ceiling versus a very high ceiling in everything that you do. All right, so then just like I was saying earlier, what UC is best for me? All of you said Irvine. I imagine a beach is involved in that decision making, right? Ocean, beach, that's all my happy place too, but you're not going to be living at the beach, because if you are, you're going to get kicked out of school in the 3rd quarter and you won't be back. So I think that's far more embarrassing. You get into college and your parents are all ecstatic and they throw you a big party, and then you end up getting kicked out by the 3rd quarter because you got put on academic probation, and then you have to go. You don't have a choice but to either go to a very expensive private school that will take you, like, I don't know, University of Phoenix or something, or you have to do community college and try again as a transfer. So now you've just slowed down your path and you've lost a year because you haven't earned anything. Do you know that a C- is considered failing at a college? C- is failing. It's a 1.9, not a 2.0. Okay? So you can't phone it in. You can't phone in college. So just think about that. All right, so just also consider what you want to major in is going to determine which UC is the best for you, or which university in general is the best for you. So if you're going to be like me, like a poli-sci history major, UCR has nothing for me. It's one of the lowest ranking schools, but UCLA, at least at the time when I was there, was ranked #5 in the country when it came to political science and international relations. Okay, that's a place I want to be. If you're looking at an engineering school, you may not even look at a UC, Cal Poly Pomona, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, something along those lines, MIT, if you're looking at the Ivy League of engineering schools. That's not to say that the UCs don't have comparable programs, they do, but if we're looking at comparing the integrity of the program and the quality of it, a Cal Poly Pomona or San Luis Obispo is going to be a far better option than maybe some of the UCs, things like that. So your major is going to determine what UC you're going to want to apply to, or what college in general you're going to want to apply to. So start thinking about that. Any of you dead set on what you want to do? Okay, one person. But that's because he's my son. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So nobody here knows what they want to do or have an idea? Just not that. Okay, let's remove the word dead set. Are we hovering over a field, perhaps? Okay, what would that field be? Okay, nursing. So if we're talking about nursing schools, one of the best and probably least expensive is going to be Cal State San Bernardino. San Marcos, Cal State San Marcos, which is North San Diego. Those would be some of the two top programs in this region that won't cost you an arm and a leg, and you'll come out making more money in your first year as a nurse than you would anywhere else, right? So that's why when you say, okay, like I'm thinking about this, it's going to specify for me. There is a great nursing program at UCLA, but there's a catch. You apply to the university, you apply to be a nursing major, your application goes to the nursing department. If you get rejected from the nursing department, you're rejected from the entire university. You have no chance of entering, even though you could have qualified to get into UCLA proper, but because you got rejected from nursing, you get rejected from the entire program. So that is a caveat. So are you willing to take the risk? So knowing where you're hovering, right, as far as majors, helps determine then where you're thinking about applying. Anybody have a different area they're hovering in? Chris, I think you had your hand up for a minute. Automotive, what specifically? Mechanical engineering. So obviously you are going to be like a Cal Poly Pomona kid and Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Those are the top two mechanical engineering schools. Robert, anything else with mechanical engineering? No? UCR is...
It depends on what you want out of it. So Cal Poly has a lot of hands-on stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And a school like UCI would have a lot more research theory-based.
Okay.
So it depends what you're interested in.
And let me tell you, mechanics hate folks that come out of the theory-based engineering classes, because unless you've had your hands in an engine, taking it apart and putting it back together, you have no idea what you're doing. So in theory, it looks like it fits all beautifully. In reality, these might be the vehicles that have the most problems. So you go back and say, it's like, well, I definitely want to get my hands dirty. I want to get in there. I want to figure this out in order to be able to design a better engine, a better this, a better that. So then the more hands-on approach, which is why your Cal Polys are going to be your top places for you to consider. And that becomes important. And why I say these things is because now we have to work backwards. So if Chris knows that Cal Poly Pomona is his target school, he's going to go and he's going to research and he's going to say, okay, what is the minimum GPA requirement? What are the types of classes they want to see me in? And do I have those things? And if I started early enough and I'm working on it from freshman year forward, then I've set myself up to come and do this your senior year to figure out, oh shoot, I didn't take this class or that class, is basically setting up yourself for not really getting into where you want to. Does that make sense? Okay. Questions? I know I'm doing a lot of the talking. There's a lot to go over, but I do want to hear from you. Like, what are your thoughts? Juniors? This is the quietest I've ever seen you. What the heck? And normally you guys can't stop talking. All right. Okay. Just please stop me if you do have a question. Any questions over here? No, you're good? Okay. All right. So all the things that I want you to think about when you're thinking about those UCs. So when you're talking about academic programs, I'd say that's number one, because that's why you're going to college. You're not going to have fun. Not that college isn't fun. It's fantastic. But above all, I'm getting a degree in something, and please do not say C's get degrees, because that's lame. It may get you a degree, but it's not going to get you very many after that. You can't possibly go to grad school when you have C's. And we already talked about C minuses don't even cut it, right? So please keep those things in mind. But it is a fantastic opportunity where you're a kid and an adult all at the same time. So you don't have a lot of the adult responsibilities, but you get to have all of the fun that comes with being an adult in an academic setting that is wholesome. That's always the key word, right? Lots of activities. Believe it or not, like Sayedna, Bishop Corliss and I were at UCLA together, and he and his twin brother had founded the Coptic Club, and that was the first time I met him. And so the Coptic Club was a very interesting experience, and all the activities and places that we went were really fun. I mean, and the traveling that we did and the service that we did as a big group, I was like, oh my God, high school, I was the only Egyptian. And then in college, I'm like, there are 50 people here who are all Egyptian. that's unheard of. And so it was a fantastic extracurricular opportunity. And a lot of these kids, their parents were doctors and lawyers and this and that. So there was that networking opportunity. It's like, oh, my dad could totally hook you up with that, which is the way, sadly, life works. It's all about who you know in addition, right? And so that becomes really important too. So the extracurriculars is a good part of the college experience. And then, of course, like we said, tuition and costs are going to be important. Getting a $200,000 loan just because you want to be at Pepperdine, which is in Malibu to overlook the ocean, but come out with a liberal arts degree that means absolutely nothing is a total waste of time and money. But it's a beautiful campus, right? So things to think about. The other thing is, for me, I love a big city. I love crowds. I love that environment. My family, not so much. Like that, it just stresses them out. And so, just we're different people, and that's totally fine. But it's like you got to go where you thrive. So if you're going to be completely overwhelmed in a campus, like I said, that has 60,000 people, that may not be the place for you to go versus somewhere that has maybe a few hundred or a few thousand, depending on, the size of the university. So just things to consider. All right, focusing on the UC, there's one application for all 9 campuses. Okay, so I hope you know that, yes? Yes? Okay. Now, it is different than the Common App. Common App is for the private universities, where it's one application, and you can click on the different private universities. And then Cal State's one common application, and you can click on any of the, I think, 11 Cal States. So if you're looking at private colleges, you're looking at UCs, you're looking at Cal States, you're looking at 3 separate applications. Some of them are very simple, like Cal State. More often than not, there's a California program called CCGI. Does that sound familiar to any of you? Private schools would not have it. But it is the California College something. But what it is when you come to fill out your UCs and Cal States, it auto-populates all of your classes and all of your grades, so you don't have to look at your transcript and type everything in. So it becomes far easier. Cal States do not have an essay. The UCs have 4 short essays. I wouldn't call them essays, maybe long paragraphs. Private universities like CBU, La Sierra, they have no essay requirement at all. It's a very simple application. Some, you just send in your transcripts and you don't have to fill out those portions. So every set of applications has different sets of requirements. But when we are going to be ready to start filling out our UCs and Cal States, which open October 1st, what you're going to need to do is have either a digital or a hard copy of your unofficial transcript. So if your district uses Aries or any of those things, does Aries sound familiar? Okay. So that's what you would need to have. Some universities, like the Cal States, will take weighted GPA, meaning that if you have an honors or an AP class, it counts as a 5.0. The UCs do not have weighted GPA. It is your academic unweighted GPA. Different set of requirements. So your weighted GPA could be 5.0, but your unweighted is 4.0, and so on, assuming you had straight A's. Okay, so which is why Cal State's requirements tend to be a little lenient. The UCs, especially the more competitive UCs, tend to have a lot of more stringent requirements. Okay, questions? Okay, am I telling you anything you already know, so that if I do, then just tell me to move on? Okay, all right. Back in my day, the UC application was $33. Now it's $80. So it's not cheap, but if you're going to apply to all 9 campuses, I don't know why you would, but discounted to be $720, I'd say that's a waste of money. The way that I would tell you to think about what colleges to apply school, right? You can do one of 2 things: 3 UCs, 3 Cal States, 3 private. That's one easy way of thinking about everything in the Trinity. You can also think about it, instead of UC, Cal State, and whatever, I can say maybe my 3 dream schools, my 3 really attainable schools, my 3 super safety backup schools, like my option of least resort. It doesn't have to be 3. I'm just sort of, kind of categorizing things for you to think about. So those are options. There's nothing that will hurt other than maybe the loss of a little time and a little money to apply for a dream school. Best thing that can happen is you get in. Worst thing that can happen is you don't get in, you're no worse off. So there's nothing wrong with applying to something like a dream school or 2. All right. That being said, like I said, we've already covered this insofar as one application, multiple campuses, and all that good stuff. So this is the breakdown of what your UCs are. And the reason we're going through this is that when we come back, the hope is that we would just be filling out the college application in the moment, and the only thing that we would be waiting on is number 6 and 7, because that's going to take some thought time. So first is all the personal stuff, right? So please make sure, one of the silliest things that really stymies your application is when you make a typing mistake. You forget to put the last number on your zip code. You forget to, I don't know, punctuate something. You don't spell your name correctly. It takes weeks and tons of phone calls in order to correct those silly errors. So please make sure. The other thing is you need to know your citizenship status. For some of you, you were born here, that doesn't matter. And so you don't have to worry about that. But the most important thing, because we know that there are a lot of folks in our church that may not have that, but you need to know what exactly your status is. Because not that it's gonna deny you anything, by the way, because these are public universities. They accept legal and undocumented students alike. Just know that. But you need to have that information. The other thing that you need to have is some income details. So these are private questions that you have to ask your parents. When we come to fill out these applications, you're not going to share that information with me. You're just going to input that, and it'll give you like a range. Does your combined family income make between this amount to that amount to that amount, and so on? So that's why it's important. And even if your parents are very private about that, you can certainly show them when the application's open. This is what the question is asking. Which box do I click on? Okay, so just, think about that. So that's some of the prep work. Then when you're talking about which campuses, so we already talked about how you can think about and what campuses you choose. And then this is then where the academic history and test scores. These are all self-reported, which means you've got to physically, in the UCs, type every single class that you've taken, plus every single either AP, IB, SAT, or ACT, or all of the above. Okay? Yes, babe. It's available. It's not mandatory to get in. You don't need those test scores to get in, but you have to report AP and IB scores regardless of whether you pass them or not. The test, it doesn't matter. So the other thing is where you're looking at the Cal States, they are going to look at all of your years combined. So 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th is in progress because you don't have grades because everything is due November 30th. First semester doesn't end until December, right? So Cal States will look at those 3 years and will ask you what classes you're taking. So I want you to listen carefully to the next part. The other thing is too, the UCs don't do that. They only want classes you've taken second semester of your sophomore year and your junior year 2 semester. They're only evaluating those 3 semesters only. That's why those are your hardest years, because that's what UCs are looking for. So you see the differences, okay? Cal States are going to look at you holistically and take your weighted GPA, so very generous. The UCs are only taking those 3 semesters unweighted. Do we understand the difference? Yes? Okay. So that's going to be really important. Now, the other thing is like, well, what if I'm taking community college classes, or like there's only space because they, I don't know, there may be only like say 12 or 15 classes I can put in, but I took more. Well, this is where you are going to, in the personal insight questions, your PIQs, talk about like, oh, in addition, I also took community college classes and yada yada, because that's the only place it's going to show. Because on the UCs, like I said, it's only going to ask you for those 3 quarter or semesters. I beg your pardon. Those 3 semesters. So that becomes really important why these 2 years are critical to your acceptance, especially to a UC. Private universities have all sorts of different barometers, but like I said, the local private schools, University of Redlands, La Sierra, CBU, Azusa Pacific, Biola, La Sierra, I don't know if Chapman, at least that's the ones I can think of right now. They tend to take everything holistically. It's in their best interest to attract kids to their schools for obviously the tuition money. Okay? All right. That doesn't mean that they're bad. I'm just telling you they're far more generous. There's going to be a place for activities and awards. Several years ago, when I had this talk with your parents, I told them that there should be a place, a box even, a shoe box, where any award, any extracurricular, any certificate that you've earned, that you just keep. In a perfect world, you would have kept a checklist or a resume or a laundry list every time you've done something, but didn't do it. So your mother's always right. Just saying. All right, so all of your involvements. Can you even remember if you had breakfast this morning? I cannot. So how are you going to remember freshman year? Okay, so when you're talking about awards and activities, that will go freshman to present. It's not like your academic history where it's just second semester of your sophomore year. So this is collectively. You've been playing piano for 20 years. Okay, fine, you're not 20, but you know what I mean. You've been swimming, you've been dribbling ball, you've been doing whatever. Okay, fantastic. How many years have you been doing that? The important thing to focus on would be, it's like, okay, let's say I was on whatever sports team. Fantastic. I started off in JV. Then I moved to varsity. Then I became co-captain. Then I became team captain. The idea being that you're not just this sort of like passive participant, but in fact, you're actually growing in your capacity and there's leadership opportunities, right? So that's really the activities that you ought to place. Please don't put down like, I don't know, like a certificate of participation means absolutely nothing, right? What did you participate in? Probably was meaningless. So just keep in mind what it is that you want to strategize, but it's got to be legit because they check. So you can't say I was president of blah, 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 and then they call the school and they're like, yeah, this kid was barely even, with a pulse in class. So, there are things. So, and then of course, there's actually a long, sort of place for you to put those things. The idea is not for you to fill every line because it's impossible. Let's say you have lots of honors and AP classes and things like that, and then you have 20 clubs that you're involved in. There's no fidelity. There's no commitment. You're just like basically checking off boxes, but not really showing leadership of any kind. So it really is about being discreet and being committed. I remember talking to this one young lady that got into Harvard. All she did since she was a little girl was act in school plays and community theater, and that was the only extracurricular she had, and she went to Harvard for undergrad. Okay? So that tells you something about the way that these you really sort of specialized universities, not about 20 clubs, but about really being dedicated to a few things. As far as scholarships and whatnot, there's going to be a place for you to check, will you be applying for financial aid? It's really a tricky question and I don't like it. All of us are going to put yes, because who wants to pay for college or but oftentimes what ends up happening is families that come from very wealthy homes, when they check, no, I don't need financial aid, mostly because they won't qualify for it anyway, they usually will get first priority in admission before the kids who get financial aid. Unless your parents are ready to pay $50,000, $60,000 a year, we're all going to be checking that, especially when you're living up in the Bay Area or living in Westwood or Irvine, like you all were saying. Those are not cheap options for housing. Okay? Question? Yes, babe.
So for activities, if we started something and let's say we dropped it, like I did volleyball for 2 years and then I stopped
2 years is a good commitment time, and you can say in your personal insight questions, and or number 7, the additional comments. This is where you get to explain some extenuating circumstances, right? Or reasons why something happened. So let's say you got straight A's, but in this one class you got a C. Something along those lines. All right, how do you explain this weird anomaly? Or that you did this for like 2 or 3 years, like you were saying, and then suddenly dropped it. What was the reasoning or the condition behind it? Usually they want to know these things because otherwise they kind of stand out and they're red flags that have them concerned. So when you explain the underlying causes or whatever was happening, sometimes it was a health issue, kids get sick and it was long term, and so they couldn't do this, that, but instead they opted for this. So that we would see in your PIQs or in your additional comments. It could be like you opted to take more community college classes in lieu of this because you were going to find a different sport or a different hobby or something along those lines. So this is where the written pieces really become super important in explaining why something suddenly shifted. You went from this to not. So then what was the circumstance? Okay. Now, if you've got other options that could certainly replace it and make you look just as good, you may not need to put it in at all. But if you only have a small sort of list of things, it becomes important. So it just depends what it is correlated with. Okay. All right. Good question. Anything else? Questions? No? Good? Yeah? Mm-hmm. PIQs. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, you will. But that's not a measure that they use to evaluate you getting the position to be accepted or not.
So you're talking about using like just expanding more on it.
You will, anything that you've taken. So community college classes, one of the beauties of them is whatever credits you've earned, for the most part, they are going to transfer to the UCs and the Cal States because that is an agreement between these public entities. So community colleges are a public entity, UCs and Cal States are. So the I get C, that form, is basically the contract that says between Crafton and the UCs, between Valley and the UCs. These are all like legal documents that says these classes on our I get C list are transferable to a Cal State, a CSU, or a UC. Therefore, the Cal States and the UCs cannot deny those credits. They will carry, but that is not a tool they use to measure your worthiness to be accepted or not. They only use those 3 semesters. The other thing that you have to be careful about, and I know it's just really layers upon layers, is that when you are at a prestigious university like a LA or Berkeley and things of that nature, and let's say you took a biology lab course at Valley or Crafton, that's great, you'll get the credit for it, but if that is your major at that university, they're gonna say, well, that's nice, but you're still gonna start in Bio 1, Bio 2, Bio 3, and you're gonna start the series with us and complete it to fruition as a part of your major, because what they know is the quality of a biology course at a community college very different than the level of biology that they're going to teach you at a university level, especially a research university, right? With top-notch, academics and things like that who've invented medicines and cures and vaccines and all sorts of, wonderful things. So it's just keep that in mind. So don't think your classes are going to waste. For Cal State, you are going to put those classes on there because CCGI, that automated system that dumps, does not include community college classes, just for high school classes. So you will be able to add those to your Cal State applications. Okay? All right. What else? Good? Okay. All right. Let's just see what we can skip through. Okay. We've already covered this. All right. Now, your A through Gs. I'm sure this is something that you've heard of, at least God, I hope so, yes? A through G? Yes? Okay. Now, mind you, see how it says 2 years of history? And some of you as seniors are in like Gov Econ, and you're like, well, that's 3 years. Why am I taking that? I put a note there for you. These are different than high school graduation requirements. Like you need 2 years of PE to graduate high school. No college cares that you've taken PE, but yeah, you have to take it because without a high school degree, you don't get into college. Where things say 2, 3, etc., 1, those are the minimums. If you are looking to compete, you're not going to take the minimum. It's foolish to think that 3 years of math are enough. You need a 4th year of math. Your senior year, you have to take math. Because if you don't, when you get into the university, you have to take a math placement test. And if the last time you took math was your junior year, and then you sat that summer, no math, your whole entire senior year, no math, summer after your senior year, no math, and then come August, September, when you start your college, you take a math assessment test. So it's almost been a year and a half, if not 2, since you've taken math. You are going to place at the very bottom. You'll be placed in college remedial math that you have to pay for, but get 0. You did not meet college level math. So you did yourself a foolish thing by not going the extra step and taking that 4th year of math. Okay? So I hate math. I still took AP Calc. I thought I wanted to be a surgeon. So I decided that after a terrible science teacher, right? But I still took AP Bio and I still took AP Chem. And I think Jacob and I were having this conversation. He's like, really? What's the last time you used AP Calc? I'm like, never. But I also know that without having taken that class, I may not have gotten a full ride to where I went and things of that sort. So sometimes it's a necessary evil. Hated every minute of it, but it was done. And so when you're going into a science field, like say nursing, but you're only taking 2 years of science, well, that doesn't make you look very good now, does it? Why aren't you taking 3? Why aren't you taking 4? Why aren't you taking more, especially if your school has it, right? So there's AP Chem, AP Bio, AP Physics, AP Environmental, right? AP Comp Sci, because that counts as a science. All of those things, you had 5 options, and you've only taken 2 years. And some of you will take like integrated science or whatever. None of that means anything. Okay? And it has to be a lab science and a physical science. So that means physics and either bio or chem. Anatomy and physiology would work as well. Okay? So think about that. 2 years of foreign language. But guess what? In order to graduate college, you also need 2 years of foreign language, which means that if you were to take Spanish 3, Spanish 4 AP, pass that Spanish test, or even Spanish 5, then you would not have to take foreign language in college. So there's a cost to everything. So I did all the way to Spanish 5, never had to take a foreign language once I got to college, but I decided for the heck of it, I wanted to take Arabic instead, so I did. Okay, so, but that was all elective options, so it gave me options because I already satisfied what I needed. The visual performing arts, okay, that's like art, music, ceramics, etc., but it can be replaced by, say, AP Art History. And for those of you doing community college, that could be art history or art appreciation. That would count as your year of performing arts. And then where it says 1 year of that college prep or elective, that would be anything above and beyond. So whatever other AP class goes outside of these 6 areas, that's your college prep elective. What are you thinking? What was the question? You sure? Do you want to ask her a question? It can, but it's not an honors or an AP. Oh, then yes, it does, if it's dual. Because that will count on your transcript. It'll show up and it would be the equivalent of an AP or honors class. You should have asked that question. It's a good question. Okay? All right. Okay, so who is asking about SATs? Anna? Okay. So right now, since COVID, they've had what they call the test blind policy. So that means that you don't have to submit your SATs or ACTs, even though you may have taken it. And you can and you should, but let's say you don't score well. You're like, oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. Okay, you don't have to submit it, but your AP scores and your IB scores you have to submit. So that's what test blind means. It's just referring to that. So you can, especially if, let's say you remember that scenario where you got like all A's and maybe a C in something or whatever, and you score really well on the SATs. I would definitely submit those scores saying you're very college ready because that's what they're supposed to measure. And this 1C was an anomaly, or whatever the case is, then that helps buffer that C. Okay? But if your scores are not good, don't bother sending them because then it won't reflect well. All right. So in that area that was about the extracurriculars, just understand that this is what's there and what's available. So you have 20 slots. If you think you're going to fill even half that, you should be wrong, right? This is not about, I did 10 activities throughout high school. How? In what time? Like, it's not possible. So really be very strategic. There was just something that I just saw a minute ago that was talking about even the ranking of the extracurriculars. Things that are very nationally ranked, like top honors, like you would see all over the country. Those are the things that really shine. Or maybe they're state awards, followed by school district awards, and then whatever else, right? So if you're talking about like programs with College Board where you're a College Board ambassador, that is nationwide. Everybody knows what AP and what an ambassador does and is. If you're looking at, you qualify for a national merit, very top national, right? It's implied in the name. If you're looking at like the presidential award for GPA, again, those are the types of honors and things you want to put in, things of that level. Don't put in that you are president of the catering club at your school because who cares? Okay, those are the types of things, right? And then, volunteer work, employment opportunities, etc. And then everything is very limited. So we're not talking about words, we're talking about characters. Every time you push a key, that is a character, including the space bar. So there's not a lot. So you have to be super concise, okay? All right. And just, I will share this with everybody. Like I'll download it as a PDF and put it in the WhatsApp group so you have it. You can show your parents, you can share it with your friends. I mean, certainly the more people, the better. And so all of the different things and what falls under them. So those community college classes, that counts. That's enrichment classes, camps, like if you do STEM camp at a college campus, there are flyers that are always sent through your school, Peach Jar or Parchment or any of those services that your district may have. All of those things, keep track of any of the volunteer services you do for church, and that way if there's record of it and the Buna signs on it or whoever happens to be the service coordinator, they can do that for you. Any of the nonprofits, Ronald McDonald House, this soup kitchen, whatever the case is, and so on. And for those of you that are working, your work experience is also included. So make sure that you do that, even though it's paid, but that's important because you have to set time aside to be able to do that. And the longer you've been working, it shows that you're not a snowflake, when the going get, tough, the snowflake melts, right? So you're not that. So just keep those things in mind. All right. I want to leave this one for later because that's just a conversation when we get to our financial aid. And then just the last thing that I want to touch on are your personal insight questions. Because what I want you to do is eventually pick which of the 8 you need to pick 4. And there are 8 questions. And which 4 are you going to work on? And which 4 really speak to you, because that's how you are going to basically sell your soul, Who are you as a person. I see that you have a GPA. I see that you have a resume. Resume says nothing about your character as a human being, but your PIQs are your chance to humanize your resume, to humanize your transcript, if you will. So to figure out where you are. And really, it's always about personal connection. Don't you dare AI this, because it's so very obvious. It is so very obvious. And there's no way that your application is going to be considered, especially when you're cheating on the application. What else are you going to do when it comes to academic integrity? So it has to be personal. It has to reflect who you are as a human being, and that's why they put them there. They used to have essay questions, and now cut them down to these PIQs, but they are designed to really impact. It could anything from a tragedy to a victory and everything in between. Comedy is fantastic too. There's nothing to say that you couldn't show your sense of humor, because that becomes important. So, but it's just a matter of how you do it deftly without sounding like a really just terrible person, like you're just snarky and sarcastic and condescending. That's not the tone you want. And that could be who you are. That's not the tone you want to imbue either. So just make sure that the questions you pick, you can really write for days on, and then it's easy to pare it down. All right? So these are just some of the strategies and why you should pick some questions over others. So who you are as an individual, what about you matches that campus, right? What is it in that campus that you see yourself doing, developing to help grow the reputation of the campus? What matters most to you? What is it that you really are the most passionate about? And it doesn't have to be academics. It could be a craft. It could be a skill. It could be a hobby. But how have you used it to either make yourself or your community a better human, right? And then what makes you different? What makes you different? It's funny how all of you think that you're very unique people, but when I see you all dressed and walking and talking, you all look the same. You act the same, you talk the same, because it's a herd mentality. There's safety in numbers, and you all meander like sheep all together, and it's very hard to distinguish one from the other, and that's not what the colleges want. What makes you you, right? So it's not what do they want to hear, it's really who am I? And maybe this is a good place to do some self-discovery. So what makes you unique? So you've really got to shine in this one, okay? Everything else, like I said, there are questions that focus on difficult situations. Maybe there was a death in the family. Maybe there was a financial crisis. I've had many kids who have gone homeless throughout their high school. I had a student who was 16 that was in 14 foster homes from the day she was born until she was a senior in high school. Pretty traumatic. Thank God none of you have that trauma, but you can understand why that becomes an important talking point in one of the PIQs. Maybe there was something cathartic like a divorce or a sibling, whatever, something happening. So think about all of those things. And they may not necessarily have happened to you, but they could have happened to somebody that was near and dear to you and how it impacted you. So there's a chance, I don't want to call it a sob story because you don't want to invent some tragedy, but the idea is there's a space for that because we're human, and you're 16, 17, 18, you're vulnerable and you're emotional, and your cognitive brain functions are not even developed until your early 20s. So it's very easy to react negatively to trauma, and that's okay, but then also talking how you've overcome it. Yeah, babe.
Is there like a word or character limit for the comment?
Yep, there sure is, 100%. Okay, so off the top of my head, I can't remember. It's a number, but it's a word, not a character limit, okay, for the PIQs, all right? Okay, so you could, between now and the next, yeah, Habib, yeah. Between now and the next time we meet, you should start creating your UC profile. And then October 1st, the application's open, and the last day to submit is November 30th, when everybody and their mother tries to submit and the system crashes and you don't get in. So We don't want to wait until then. And by March, you get to find out where you got in and where you did not. And by May, you will commit to a university, at least for the UCs. Pay your $450, sort of placeholder fee, and then wait for them to send you stuff on orientation and housing and all that fun goodness. And that's it. So that's where we're going to stop today. I think that was a fair amount of information. Probably far too much, I imagine. But I just wanted to give you clarity on what it is that you, especially the juniors. Are you ready for college applications? I'll see you this time next year. For the seniors, if you are interested in getting some help with regards to your PIQs, like I would need them written by the end of October if you wanted to send them to me for editing, because